What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Rats Report. It is time to talk about the Toronto Raptors because at the time of recording, we are about 3 days away from the NBA draft lottery, and there has been a player that I really have researched a lot and I really like for the Toronto Raptors, and that is no other than Egor Demin, and we will be discussing him in today's video. So if you are ready to watch, make sure to hit the subscribe button. And with that being said, let's get into today's video. Now, as you guys know, I do like to give out shout outs for my channel, and the shout out for today's video goes out to Todd Stevens. So, Todd, thank you so much for supporting this channel. Through your likes and comments, it is very much appreciated. Now, Egor has been a name that was very hyped up coming into his college season. He was being touted as one of the guys that could potentially be drafted in the top 5, top 10. Obviously, we know his stock has dropped a lot since then, given his college season, but there is so much more to Egor than a lot more people. A lot of people are not realizing, and that's why I made this video to really convince you guys that he could be a great pickup for the Toronto Raptors. But for those that aren't familiar with Egor, let's quickly go over his stats and highlight, what he has done in his college season. Then we'll talk about his potential. We'll talk about, what he could bring to the Toronto Raptors, some of his strengths as well. So Egor, as you take a look at the stats there, again, he's a 6'9", 19-year-old point guard. He played for BYU. He averaged 10.6 points, 1.2 steals, 5.5 assists, 3.9 rebounds. Didn't shoot the ball really well from anywhere, to be honest, except for the 2-point field goal percentage in which he shot 55%. His free throws, he was hitting at 69.5% on 2.5 attempts. His three-point shot was not great at 27% on 4.7 attempts per game. And overall, his field goal percentage on 9.3 attempts, he only averaged 41.2%. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why are we talking about this guy? For someone like Egor, those stats, to say they're underwhelming would be an understatement. He didn't look good overall. His stats, there's so much potential to him. But I want to quickly highlight a few things before we go deeper into, what I think he could do for the Toronto Raptors and his potential as well. And it's important to note that when we talk about Egor, there's something that I personally think did hinder his development, but also I think it really hurt his stock as well. So when we talk about Egor, he started off the college season great, but then he had a knee injury. Egor, as you see there, the headline, excuse me, stating will miss time for BYU with a knee injury. And I wanted to take a deeper look into this and how much it really affected his game. So I went into the game log and I broke down the stats here for you guys. So as you see here, Egor's stats after injury, and I'll highlight the before because I want to highlight these ones particularly first. In the 25 games after he injured his knee, he averaged 9.8 points, 5.3 assists, 3.6 rebounds, shot the ball only 23.4% from the three-point line, and shot it overall 38.5% from the field. Now, why is this important? Because when we talk about his stats before the injury, you'll notice that, again, before the injury, he played 7 games. So again, you could say that it's limited size, limited sample really, but he averaged 14.2 points, 6.2 rebounds. Rebounds, he averaged about 4 per game. But this is where it really makes me question how much that knee injury really affected him, not only throughout his college season, but just overall his game as well. In the first 7 games, as you see there, I didn't include the game. I do want to say I didn't include the game where he injured his knee because he went, I believe, like 0 of 10, but he shot the ball for the first 7 games, 44%. And I put in the numbers specifically in the bracket there for a good reason. It wasn't as if, for the first 7 games, he only shot 10 threes and I don't know, made 4 of them. He shot 34 threes in those 7 games, made 15 of them. And if that's not a good enough, sample for you, let's take a look at his field goal percentage here. He shot 56.9% from the field on 65 attempts, made 37 of them. So that should really give you an idea of, why I do believe that that knee injury may have affected him. Now, I know the question that a lot of people may be asking themselves right now is, well, if he's injury prone, he's already got a knee injury, does that should be a concern for moving forward? I don't necessarily think so, just given how medicine and doctors and just rehab has evolved so much throughout the last 7-8 years in the NBA. I don't think that's a concern, especially considering he is 19 years old. But the question a lot of people may also have is, well, if he was injured, why did he play through injury? And, why did BYU rush him? Well, you have to take into consideration there are 2 factors when we talk about why players may rush back. For someone like Egor, he may have rushed back to, he doesn't want to miss a lot of time, because he wants to display his skill set, but maybe he was playing through a little bit of pain. And the other question you may ask is, why did BYU rush him? Well, for one simple reason. Outside of the top colleges, like Duke and other colleges, for BYU, this is a great point to make when you go to, the off season and you're recruiting high school players, because now you can go and say, well, Igor was someone that got drafted in the lottery, got drafted top 10, wherever you may see him being drafted, and then you can convince players to come play for your college. I think that's why it was kind of probably a mutual agreement. I'm not saying BYU rushed him, but I do think that did affect his game a lot. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say when you look at the Toronto Raptors as a whole, this isn't necessarily what they need. They don't need a center. They don't need a point guard or a guard, excuse me. They need a center. They need more depth. They need more size. So you know what? And I will address all of those really quickly, but I quickly wanted to go through his strengths and then I'll explain why Igor is such a good fit for the Toronto Raptors. So when we talk about Igor, I think it's important to talk about, some things he does on the defensive side. I'm not saying he's a lockdown defender by any means, but he does deflect passes, which is important for like him being a 6'9" guy, having those long arms definitely does help a lot. Again, is he ever going to be a great, absolute amazing defender? Absolutely not, but it is important to note that once you get those deflections, it also really helps you get a lot of steals, but also just run in transition as well. He also has great floor vision. Now I think this is also very important to talk about, because when you look at two teams in particular right now who are very highly offensively powered, who are they? The Pacers and the Denver Nuggets. Now, you look at the way that Tyrese Halliburton and Nikola Jokic are playing. I know what people are going to say. No, I'm not comparing those two players to Igor, but it is important to note that the style of play from, what it used to be, NBA used to be about 10 years ago, where you would just have a bunch of great scores, big threes, it's not working anymore in the NBA. You need more passing, which is why the Raptors actually got Darko. That is why they got Darko, to have a little bit more team ball movement rather than ISO scoring. That kind of play just does not look, I'm not stating that you don't need ISO scores. You definitely need them, to hit clutch buckets. You need baskets. You go to your ISO score. But just overall, you have to realize that the NBA is shifting towards a different trend, if you want to call it, that you have to have a lot more team ball. You obviously need depth as well. There's a lot more to winning a championship and even winning in the playoffs. But I think that is a key recipe to have when you're a guard or point guard, or you have players that can move the ball the way that Igor does. He can be a floor general. So again, I don't want to compare him to Tyrese Halliburton. I did see a bit of him. There's different players. I know some people are comparing him to Josh Giddey. He's like a bunch of different players combined together, because I don't think he's as aggressive as Josh Giddey, but you need a good floor general like this. Now, I know people are going to say, well, we have a lot of point guards already. We don't need another guard. We're kind of loaded at the guard position. But when you talk about Igor, it's important to see that he just has great floor vision. If people think Scottie Barnes is a good passer, seeing some of the passes that Igor can, has displayed through his highlights is absolutely unreal. And I think he's the kind of player that you can rely on, to run your offense and run a really good offense. And one of the things that I've been hearing a lot of people state for the last several years, or even since Scottie Barnes has been on the team, is, well, we don't really have a point guard that can feed Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes is always the initiator. He's looking to get other guys involved, but by maybe getting Igor, what you can do is have maybe Scottie focus a little bit more on scoring, and then you'll have a guard, point guard, whatever you want to call him, be that, floor general who can really pass the ball. He can get Scottie in his in the paint. He can find him for those good open spots as well. So I think it's important to have players like Igor, and it'll be a huge bonus to even Scottie Barnes, even though a lot of people may feel like their games kind of don't complement each other as much. And kind of just tying into what we talked about again, can run a very good offense. Now, it's important to see this. I don't know about you guys. I've been watching a lot of Denver and Pacers games in the playoffs this season. And when you see the way that the offense has run, look, I know people say championships, are built on defenses. Defenses win championships, and that is important. There's no denying that. But it's also very important to not just only have defense, but also have offense as well, which is very key to winning in the playoffs. When you really need someone that can run a good offense. We obviously have seen that through different guys, through Kyle Lowry, that can run offenses, find guys in the right spot. And I think Igor, just given the way the NBA is also trending, do keep in mind that unfortunately we can't win with 6'6" point guards anymore. The NBA is no longer that. It's trending towards taller guys. And regardless of how you may feel, there's obviously limitations as to what a 6'9" guy could do as compared to a 6'1", 6'2" guy. There's definitely benefits to having a taller guard as well. And lastly, I do want to say Igor does have a very high ceiling. I know people may not agree with me given some of his weaknesses, which, by the way, I'm not highlighting in this video, because I wanted to wait till draft combine. I wanted to wait till private workouts, but he does have a very high ceiling. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on scouting reports, and I forget what YouTube channel was stating, but they said he has been working out for teams and he's been shooting really, really well. So again, do not be surprised when Igor's stock rises quite a bit when it comes to the NBA post draft combine. You'll see a lot of high You'll see a lot of players whose stock has risen. You'll see a lot of players whose stock has fallen. I don't think Igor will be one of those players whose stock will fall. I think if anything, it'll rise, and he just it's going to be one of those players when you look at the NBA in about 2, 3 seasons and you do a redraft and you're going to wonder why so many teams passed on Igor. Now, overall, why do I think he's going to be great for the Toronto Raptors? You have to consider who is coaching the Toronto Raptors is Darko. And look, I know people are going to say, why are we drafting players based on who are coaches? He may not be here for the long term. You have to understand, you have to give your coaches the right pieces to play basketball. That's why we had Nick Nurse, we had those switchable defenders because I guess Nick Nurse just didn't like traditional centers, right? It didn't work in Tampa. That's why we had the 6'9" vision. And I'm sure you have noticed, but ever since Darko has been the head coach, look at the players we have been drafting. Grady Dick. Look at the players we've been drafting. Jacoby Walter. And obviously we got Jonathan Mogo and obviously Jamal Shed as well. But we've been focused a little bit more on offensive-minded players rather than defensive-minded players. Now, there may be a lot of concern about his shot, whether that's going to work in the NBA. I do think he'll figure it out. Again, Darko does such a good job of developing players, but also I just want to state this time and time again. When you look at, I want to keep using this example because I think it's a little bit underrated and kind of slept on. When you look at someone like Tyrese Halliburton, you look at some of his teammates outside of Pascal and obviously Miles Turner. Why are they performing as well as they are? Because Tyrese can run a very good offense. And I think Igor at some point will be able to do that as well. Again, I do want to remind people he is only 19 years old. So yes, he may not be the more NBA ready player to come out of this draft, but there is benefits to that as well. And I want to use a comparison, not to compare NBA players or Igor to, a dog, but if anyone who has had a pet, when you have a puppy, is it easier to train a puppy or a 5-year-old dog? Now, why do I make this comparison? Well, there are some benefits to having a player who is a little bit more raw because you can kind of mold him into the player you want him to be rather than a player that is, well developed and is kind of fixated in his own ways. Now it's going to be hard to kind of change those habits. So again, Igor is like a blank canvas, if you want to say, and you can paint him however you want. I think it's going to be a great selection for the Toronto Raptors. I know not everyone is going to feel that way because there are more attractive names, but do not be surprised when Igor's stock rises post draft combine. So again, that is it for today's video. I will get to the trivia question as well, but I'm very curious to see what you guys think about Igor. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and let's get into our trivia question for today. And the trivia question for today is, which city was Egor Demin born in? Was it A, Moscow? Was it B, St. Petersburg? Was it C, Kazan? Or was it D, Penza? So whoever answers this trivia question correctly first in the comment section gets a shout out in my next video. I've been sitting on this video, guys, for about literally a few days after I made my last video. It's been a very challenging video, not because of how much effort went into it. It's just I'm trying to think of ideas of how I can convince people that Igor is going to be a good player in the NBA. And I'm going to be honest, there are some points I made, but if you're honestly just looking at stats, you're not going to be impressed. But I firmly believe he's going to be a great player in the NBA, and I think the Raptors should absolutely draft him. So again, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.